Before most clubs had even heard these names, Chelsea's data team were already running the numbers, identifying the ceiling and agreeing the fees. Some of these players were still teenagers playing in Kazakhstan, Brazil and Portugal. One of them hadn't even turned 17. And yet here we are, 5 of the most exciting young footballers on the planet, all heading to Stamford Bridge this summer. But here's the thing though, not all of these 5 are equal bets. Some are almost guaranteed contributors, others are almost entirely projection. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which is which and why one of them in particular, the Premier League genuinely hasn't seen coming. These are the 5 players set to arrive this summer, ranked by ceiling, by fit and by how much you should actually believe the hype. So let's count them down. At number 5, we start between the posts, because Chelsea quietly solved a long-term goalkeeper problem before anyone really noticed they had done it. Mike Penders, Belgian, 6'7", exactly 2 meters tall, and just 20 years of age. Chelsea signed this guy in August 2024 for 20 million euros, and almost no one talked about it at the time, or even talk about it right now. So here's the context. Penders came through at Genk, became their first choice goalkeeper as a teenager, which is already remarkable, and then spent last season on loan at our sister club Strasbourg, where he played 97% of available league minutes. Not rotated with, not dropped, trusted week in, week out in a competitive Ligue 1 environment. Most goalkeepers his age are playing under 23s football or warming benches. Penders has over 75 senior appearances before his 21st birthday. That experience curve is exactly what separates him from the typical academy prospect. The Thibaut Courtois comparisons have already been made, and I want to come back to why that specific comparison keeps coming up, because it's not just about his height, or the fact he's 6'7", or the fact he actually looks like him, or the left foot. It's something more fundamental about how Xabi Alonso builds from the back. And don't get me wrong, he's not going to come walking into Stamford Bridge as the number 1, that's not the role. He'll probably compete with Rob Sanchez unless a new goalkeeper replaces him, play some cup games, provide genuine competition. But the key word in there is genuine, because if a starting goalkeeper gets injured and Penders comes in, I don't think he embarrasses himself in the slightest. Invest in your stocks for Mike Penders, because in 3 years' time, I really do think he'll be our starting goalkeeper. And he's only at number 5 because he won't play a huge role next season. He could even get loaned out again for some even more first team minutes. But at his age, the Belgian national team actually have brought him to the World Cup, not as a spectator, as a goalkeeper they believe in and want around the team for the future. There is a clear plan for Mike Penders at Chelsea. He's probably the safest long-term bet on this list, and a goalkeeper who could be at Stamford Bridge for the next decade. But if he's at number 5, then number 4 is a completely different kind of bet altogether. There's also one player who Chelsea secretly flew to London for surgery, rehabbed at Cobham, and who most football fans still have no idea even exists. We'll get to that story because it tells you everything about how this ownership and sporting hierarchy actually operates. Since the Clearlake and Bluecoat ownership arrived, the strategy has been unmistakable. Find young talent that hasn't fully been priced yet, lock them in early, and bet on development. They signed Esteva when he was 17. They agreed a deal for Kendry Pires when he was just 15 years old. Sometimes it works, sometimes it absolutely doesn't, but the model is keeping on running. Kazakhstan, 17 years old, 9 goals, 3 assists and 26 appearances this season, playing in senior men's football in a professional league, and Chelsea paid about £2 million for him. That is either a genius £2 million move or a complete shot in the dark. Dastan Setpayev is a striker or a winger or a number 10 depending on the game, who's comfortable with both feet, physically small but devastatingly direct. He's already registered 24 goals and 10 assists across his senior career before turning 18. But that goal record in a men's league at that age is genuinely exceptional regardless of where that league sits. Here's the thing though, it is Kazakhstan's top flight, and that caveat does matter. The jump from Kairat Almaty to Cobham training sessions with Premier League first teamers is not a small step, it's a canyon. We've seen players who look exceptional in lower tier European football arrive at elite academies and completely disappear, and it's happened at Chelsea and they know that. So why spend £2 million on a 17-year-old from Kazakhstan when that same money could go elsewhere? Because the pattern Chelsea are running here is not about certainty, it's about asymmetric value. If Setpayev develops into even a fringe top flight striker, the return on that £2 million is astronomical. He starts for Kazakhstan's international team up front. They're not the best team in the world, they're not even in the top 48 that made it to the World Cup. But he's already faced Wales, he's already played against Belgian internationals, and he got on the score sheet against opposition that would embarrass most teenagers. He played in the Champions League against Real Madrid and impressed against Celtic as well. The data is quite thin, but what exists points towards a player whose ceiling is genuinely hard to define at this stage. Where does he fit in next season? Honestly, probably the under 21s. Doubt alone, possibly just a year of acclimatization at Cobham. Maybe guessing the expected treatment will be something like what David Washington had, Dujon, Whisper, Richards as well, although they haven't taken off just as of yet. But the potential is real and the timeline is not sure. If he does end up impressing Xabi Alonso as well, I'm sure he'll give him some minutes. Sapaev is a lottery ticket and Chelsea bought it for £2 million. So number 4 with a massive upside but also massive uncertainty. But number 3 is a player where the story behind the signing reveals far more than the stats ever could. So on paper, Denner Evangelista is the hardest on this list to evaluate because there is almost no senior footage to work with. He's just turned 18, he's played 23 appearances recorded for the Corinthians under 20s, but has not featured for the first team. And he doesn't even have a recorded game in 2026 on any major stats platforms. And there is a reason for that, because in October 2025, Chelsea quietly flew the 17-year-old Brazilian left-back to London for some knee surgery. It was a meniscus injury, they handled the operation, they managed the rehabilitation at Cobham personally. Corinthians' initial position was actually that they didn't want to sell him. But as the buyout clause was only £1.6 million domestically to other Brazilian teams, Chelsea came in at £8.6 million plus £3.4 million in add-ons. Corinthians accepted him rather than lose him to another Brazilian club for a fraction of that. And that's not a small investment, by the way. And although he has basically zero experience right now, he had a bad injury and Chelsea protected him when he was actually broken. I mean, this is quite obvious. Clubs don't spend nearly £10 million on an 18-year-old left-back with no senior appearances unless their data team are absolutely convinced that the raw material is there and exceptional. When you layer the injury story on top of that, what you're actually seeing is the Blueco model making a statement that they believe in this player enough to oversee his physical recovery personally. But the reason he's number 3 on this list, and what makes him relevant, is the profile. He's an attacking left-back who can function as a wing-back, which is exactly the sort of role Xabi Alonso wants filled on that left side. Cucure's future unclear as I speak, and Jarell Hato being fundamentally a defensive player and better suited to a left centre-back role in a back 3. There is a positional gap as a left wing-back. Denner, if he recovers properly and impresses in pre-season, could actually find himself competing for real minutes sooner than expected. And here is one more thing worth mentioning. Denner is actually the cousin of Gabriel, the Arsenal centre-back. Which, yes, is a rivalry detail, but what it actually signals is mentality genetics. Gabriel is one of the scariest players in the Premier League and one of the highest performers too. If that translates to Denner, and it often does, Chelsea have bought an absolute machine with high technical quality. And he is also Brazilian. So Denner at 3, almost entirely projection, but the projection is built on €10 million of conviction. Number 2 though, we leave the speculation behind entirely. Valentin Barco, 21 years old, a bit older than the rest. Argentinian left-footed midfielder who should be joining Chelsea imminently. Transfermarkt gives it a 90% probability as I speak. Multiple journalists have already confirmed the deal. He's already announced that he's leaving Strasbourg too. It is as close as a deal as you'll get before an official announcement. So Barco's story is very interesting. Brighton found him but couldn't use him and sold him on, just trying to break even. Chelsea gave him a second chance and bought him for Strasbourg, who got moved into midfield and unlocked the player we're seeing today. The backstory is actually a brilliant piece of scouting architecture. At Boca Juniors, he was making his name as an attacking left-back. He was making waves across the world, and Boca sold him to Brighton for €9 million, which is a significant investment for a teenager at the time. He played a bit at Brighton, but he was loaned to Sevilla where he was poor, and he came back, went straight out again to Strasbourg on loan, and Strasbourg eventually paid €10 million to make it permanent. A marginal profit for Brighton, who were essentially just getting their money back and moving on. But Chelsea had already identified him through the Strasbourg partnership and spent those 18 months watching him become a different player entirely, with a keen eye. What makes Barco so interesting is his versatility. First breakthrough as an attacking left back, Strasbourg used him heavily in midfield, but he's capable of operating in multiple areas on the pitch. That kind of tactical flexibility will make him a real Swiss Army knife, exactly the sort of profile that Xabi Alonso tends to love. He's in the 98th percentile for expected assists in Ligue 1, 93rd percentile for big chances created, 86% of duels won. He's rarely dribbled past, his long ball accuracy is elite as well, and he gets on the ball constantly, 90th percentile for touches, which means in Alonso's system where midfielders need to receive under pressure, recycle quickly, Barco's profile fits almost perfectly. He's compact, really rugged without being huge physically, and he'll run for 90 minutes without complaint. Still only 21 years old, he's been called up for the reigning world champions with Argentina at the World Cup. the rate at which he's developing, the conversation around him is going to change so quickly. If you zoom out, the same pattern that defines Chelsea's entire transfer strategy repeats with Barco. Find the undervalued asset, develop it at the club or through the sister club, and extract at the right moment. Maybe morally it's not the best to use another club as a laboratory to test stuff out, but Barco's not a gamble. I think he's really going to improve Chelsea. So at number 2, Valentin Barco, a player who could legitimately be a first team contributor from day one of Xabi Alonso's era. But number one is a player the Premier League genuinely hasn't seen coming yet, and is going to be a problem for every defender in England. 15 months ago, Chelsea and Sporting Lisbon shook hands on a €44 million agreement for a teenager who was at that moment becoming the best young player in Portugal. Not one of the best, the best. Giovanni Quenda, 19 years old, left-footed, primarily a right winger but capable of playing on the left. Crucially for Xabi Alonso, capable of functioning a high-energy wing-back because of his defensive work rate and physical capability. £44 million for an 18-year-old is by no means a small investment. It is actually more than Estevao, one of the highest fees Chelsea have paid for a young prospect. His physical tools get the headlines, but his intelligence is what makes the ceiling pretty much unlimited. In the Portuguese First Division this season, in a season really disrupted by injury, Quenda sits in the 98th percentile for assists per 90, 93rd percentile for expected assists, and 96th percentile for big chances created. Also the 87th percentile for successful dribbles, and his defensive numbers are equally striking, 96th percentile for recoveries in players in his position. And that matters enormously for what Alonso is going to ask for his wide players. And this is an injury hit season. I know it's not great that we're signing another player that's been heavily injured, but the year before, his non-penalty expected goals were in 86th percentile, and he was integral to Sporting's domestic double in 2024, impressing Ruben Amorim so much at the time that they increased his buyout from €45 million to €100 million mid-contract, but we ended up getting for 44. Now let's be clear, Chelsea are not getting him on a cheap, but if Quenda develops into the player many believe he can become, that fee could eventually look like a bargain. Right now though, it's a major statement of belief from the club. The other thing is he also did his rehabilitation from the big injury at Cobham as well. Just like Denner, Chelsea aren't just signing these players, they're building relationships, building trust, making themselves place these kids, and that's really important for these young players' futures. The Guardian have named him one of the best talents born in 2007 worldwide. Roberto Martinez, the Portugal manager, has publicly praised his one-on-one ability and creative intelligence. Manchester United were heavily linked for a long time, but Chelsea moved first, moved quietly, and owned the agreement. At 5'8", he's not the tallest, but is very stocky. Pace, close control, acceleration out of tight spaces, and the tactical intelligence to press and create in the same sequence. All of that mixed together under a manager like Xabi Alonso, who values positional clarity and intensity in equal measure. Very dangerous. There's not going to be a loan for Quenda, he's coming straight in, and the Premier League won't know what's hitting him. I picked him at number 1, and I don't think it's particularly close. So there it is, 5 players, 5 different kinds of bet. The model Chelsea are running is genuinely unlike anything else in European football right now. If the player hits, the first team gets better. If they don't, the sale covers the bet. If not, it's profit anyway, and the cycle continues. The losses are manageable, and the wins, huge potential. They have had some bad failures, and they will have more, but this summer's 5, I believe in these. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy this one too, so click here, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.